Hello, welcome back to Marathon Man, where I'm going through Doctor Who from the very beginning, and you join me as we reach the end of the third Doctor's first season. Already! With the reduction of episodes per year, season length pretty much halved, and the stories this season have mostly been 7-episode monsters, and so this kind of results in the feeling that no sooner have we ushered in the third Doctor that we've already finished his first year in the role. And I don't think I'm going against the grain here when I say that I think we finish off that first year with the best story of the season. There are serials which enjoy really strong reputations, and I think that Inferno is most definitely one of them. It tends to get spoken of incredibly highly, and while sometimes I may disagree with the popular consensus when it comes to Doctor Who, in the case of Inferno, I think it's well earned. I think when compared with previous Doctor Who, a byword for its 7th season is maturity. The stories that the 7th season is telling just feel much more mature than previous Doctor Who, and I think I've made mention of that in pretty much almost every video I've made for season 7, and this story continues that trend. Like Doctor Who and the Silurians and the Ambassadors of Death, Inferno uses its increased episode length to not only more richly explore themes and ideas, but to also still tell a really entertaining and thrilling story. So I came away from the Ambassadors of Death convinced that it was a story about how diplomacy, compassion and empathy are much better negotiating tools than brute force and xenophobia, as much as it was a cool story about creepy astronauts. And so on one level, Inferno can be enjoyed as a rollicking adventure that takes place in an alternate universe where much fun can be had with the parallel counterparts to our beloved regulars. And I do really enjoy Inferno on that level, I just happen to enjoy it even more on another one, and that is to say that I think Inferno is, while it is a rollicking adventure set in a parallel universe, I think it's as much a story about how free will is one of the most important things that makes us human. This is why the Primord's presence is important, very important. By visiting the parallel universe, the story dares us to question free will. By introducing the concept of parallel worlds to the show, the viewer is briefed on the theory, chiefly that different decisions lead to different outcomes, and so a world which runs parallel to our own may not be entirely identical. And then we can meet the different versions of each character and be both entertained and repulsed by how different they are. Elizabeth starting out as harsh and unwavering as she does is a stark contrast to the Liz that we've become familiar with over the previous adventures. Enough to make us wonder, what made her this way? Almost to the point where we don't realise that we're actually automatically on board with the fact that something made her this way. Similarly with the Alt Brig. In any other story, he'd be the villain the Doctor has to thwart. Here, that bastard is wearing the face of our beloved Brigadier, a man who's shown himself to be the best of British and always cool and calm in a crisis, and is now this awful, horrible, boo-hiss-worthy. It's unsettling, and again, we find ourselves asking the question, what made him this way? So very subtly, the story is introducing the idea of free will without ever really telling us that's what it's doing. Because it turns out the viewer is already thinking along the lines of these characters are born exactly the same in both universes, but they're moulded by the differences in their surroundings. The premise of this story grabs the imagination with both hands, shakes it about a bit and says you can do a lot of the work yourself. Nature versus nurture has long been cited as something to ponder, but when we're presented with the ingenious concept of different dimensions all running parallel to one another, we all seem to just subconsciously agree that nurture is the overriding factor. And this is where the Primords come in. The Primords are exactly the same in both universes. If two counterparts succumb to being a Primord, they'll end up the same. The characters may be very different from one world to the other, but the Primords are identical in behaviour and appearance. So how can we come away from this story and not think it's showing us just how important free will is in making us who we are? That the resolution which saves one planet but destroys another rests on one single decision is a masterstroke. The free will to make that decision is what will save a world, and the Doctor witnesses both outcomes. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant stuff. As brilliant as it is, there is another watchword I could apply it to Inferno. Maturity is still most definitely the order of the day, but that's not really what I mean. You can equally just apply the word bleak. We see an entire world burn, its inhabitants wiped out, and a familiar world too, ostensibly our world. Doctor Who has never gone this bleak, not just because of how it makes us feel, but also because we have come to know the Doctor and how this will affect him. Sure, he may look different now, but he's still the same man we've followed for 7 seasons. We know full well that the Doctor will have wanted desperately to save them, but was just not able to. We know that this will rest heavy on him, and consequently, it's deeply affecting. That said, it's also necessary from a storytelling point of view. To see what happens to the parallel world shows us what's in store for the characters we're familiar with. This story has its cake and eats it. It gets to wipe out the planet and kill Liz and the brig before our eyes to let us know the stakes and then save them. Without a kind of like cop-out going back in time to avert it from happening thing. The relief when the crisis is averted in our universe is all the more palpable because we have just seen the alternative. And most climaxes in stories will take the audience up to the wire and then bring them back again. But Inferno throws us over it. The Alt-Brig's bravery deserts him and he attempts to kill the Doctor for not saving them. Now, look, we know this isn't our brig, but given that we've kind of already subconsciously jumped on board with the idea that he would have been the same Lethbridge Stewart up to an unknown point, this is a very, very grim depiction of a man we kind of come to know and like. This takes an already bleak story and plunges it bleaker. And conversely, the counterparts to Liz, Sutton and Petra all accept that they'll lose their lives as they help the Doctor, and we see that this acceptance doesn't assuage their fear much at all. Petra's chilling screams as the lava advances proves this. They are helping the Doctor even though they know they won't escape. Usually, this would be portrayed with a stoic bravery. Not here, and it does all of them even more credit. The whole world burns. The scale is tremendous and it is as dark as dark. But the whole thing is so well put together that I think it is every bit deserving of its shower of adoration. The parallel universe element is woven so elegantly into the script. It comes at a point that at 7 episodes this story doesn't feel stale. Had it been introduced in like episode 5 like the plague was in Doctor Who and the Silurians, then it would have stuck out like a sore thumb. Here, though, it's just knitted together so much better. It's cracking. I cannot think of a pacier run of so many episodes in a row. The stunt work from Havoc is outstanding, and the characters are all great. All great. Stallman is easily the biggest prick the Doctor has had to deal with so far, although he deals with him admirably in both parallels. And the relationship between Greg Sutton and Petra and their counterparts is a really nice additional thread, and it helps to beef this story up rather than pad it out. That's one of the most noticeable things about Inferno. It is not padded out, it is beefed up. Such excellent material obviously brings out the best in Jon Pertwee, who cannot have been accused of coasting up until this point anyway. This Doctor is wonderful to spend time with, and let me tell you, this is quite the U-turn for me, considering that once upon a time I would have had the third Doctor way down in my list of favourites. For example, when he's locked up and breezily chatting away with the next cell, he asks,
"Hello, chap. How you doing? Been down here long, have you? Read any good police records lately?"
And because I used to have trouble getting on with the third Doctor, I am so pleasantly surprised with how much I get on with him when I meet him on marathons. He really has invigorated the show and shaken it up by making it definitively his own. There used to be a raging fan debate that may still go on, I don't know. I took a small step back from fandom a few years ago, that the third Doctor was the Tory Doctor. When to me it's always felt glaringly obvious that Jon Pertwee's Doctor has been set up as such a liberal force against establishment and authority that it's one of the reasons why this story works as well as it does. Even though I'm no fan of the Tories, if you couldn't tell, I'm not about to equate all Tories with an authoritarian regime, even though I do hold some very real fears that we seem to be inching ever closer to making some awful repeats of 20th century history. But even though the Third Doctor occasionally rubs shoulders with high-up authority figures and quaffs wine with them at the club, the Third Doctor still seems to be holding what I see as very liberal values. And this is turned up further when he's dropped into a fascist regime like the Parallel Earth. Now, look, Doctor Who is such a broad church that all of us fans can come from different walks of life and hold very different beliefs and principles and see different things in the show. So I know that this comes from a lot of fans being able to see things in the Third Doctor that I can't. Likewise, I'm probably seeing a lot of things in the Third Doctor that other fans can't. And that's the reason I think the debate might still rage on about the Third Doctor being a Tory. Me, though, can't see it at all. Inferno being such very good stuff means that Pertwee's Doctor, already well established, truly and without question comes into his own. He may outwardly seem, ridiculous costume and car aside, rather ordinary, but after the first two Doctors, that in itself is something different. It's a very interesting change from Troughton, but it's still most definitely a change, and he's still most definitely the Doctor, even if he is the most urbane Doctor. And for his reputation as the Doctor of Action, Pertwee seems very cautious, overly so at times, like running around the gantries and the like. And he can't run particularly well, and I know that's because, I think it's because he had a back injury or something. And I'm not throwing shade here, because I actually think it comes out as rather endearing. The Doctor finally believing that he's a man of action, but still kind of adorably not getting it quite right. So Season 7 is finished, and one of the highlights of the show has just graced my screen. The Third Doctor is now firmly embedded, and his era can start being built upon and added to. Unfortunately, though, it means that we've come to the point where we have to say goodbye to Liz. I love Liz, actually. Like Dodo, she wasn't treated too well as a character, but unlike Dodo, she was performed to absolute perfection. Now, that isn't a dig at Jackie Lane, who had very inconsistent material. It's more just effusive praise for Caroline John. It's a shame we didn't get to see how Liz would evolve going forward from this point, but it was a blast spending time with her. 278 episodes down now, and I'm about to meet one of Doctor Who's most recognisable villains and one of Doctor Who's most recognisable companions. The Third Doctor's era is about to coalesce, but will I like it as much as I have the almost proudly different 7th season?
But I don't exist in your world.
And you won't feel the bullets when we shoot you.
Nope. Cannot think of one. This really is one of the very best stories in all of Doctor Who. I can't praise it enough. An absolute classic. As ever, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this jaunt to a parallel universe, then you know how YouTube works. Please do hit the like thumb and share it around until you can share no more. It really, really does help. And what do you think of Inferno? Have I gone over the top, or is it really that good? Should Liz have had more time in the show, or was it right that she was edged out when she was? And dare I ask, what do you think about the Third Doctor being a Tory? I might come to regret asking that. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you back here soon for a recap of Season 7 and a look at what my top 10s look like at this point in the marathon. So if you don't want to miss that, hit the subscribe button, clang the cloister bell, and I will see you soon.